Hello everyone, my name is Rosalba Giarratano. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a Hispanic woman with long, dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. I'm wearing glasses, and I am wearing a bright pink shirt. And I am super excited to talk to you today about best practices to provide presentations with accessibility in mind. So, first, I would like to share with you a little bit about me. So, I am currently serving as a Pathways intern supporting NASA's Office of STEM Engagement at the Goddard Institute for Space Studies in New York City. I also have the privilege of serving as a NASA's liaison for the GLOBE program in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am also a proud member of NASA Goddard's Equal Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Hispanic Advisory Committee for Employees. I am currently pursuing a PhD in Education, Instructional Design and Technology, and I am a certified professional in Accessibility Core Competencies by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And I am committed to learning and advocating for accessibility every day. And on my screen, I have a picture of me posing for the camera in front of a large building that has an American flag on it and a huge NASA logo on it. This tall building is called the Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, and it's a famous building in NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Okay, so before going into the content of this session, I would like to conduct a brief pre-assessment. So I will present you with 5 questions, and these are multiple choice answer questions, and so I will just give you a couple of seconds. They're easy, so I just want you to think about what your answer is, and then we will move on. So the first question is, I describe my appearance when I introduce myself at the beginning of my presentations. A, always. B, most of the time. C, sometimes. Or D, never, or I am not sure what that means. Question number 2. I add alternative text when I use images on my presentation slides. A, always. B, most of the time. C, sometimes. Or D, never, or I do not know what alternative text is. Question number 3. If I use a list on my presentation, for example, to explain the steps of a procedure or to list several items, I use the built-in numbering or bullets options of the application. A, always. B, most of the time. C, sometimes. Or D, never, or I do not know what built-in numbering or bullets options means. Question number 4. If I use a table on my presentation, I identify which row contains the column headers. A, always. B, most of the time. C, sometimes. Or D, never, or I do not know what identifying rows that contain column headers means. And question number 5. Videos become more accessible if they have A, captioning. B, audio description. C, transcripts. Or D, all of the above. Okay, so now I would like to provide you with an outline of the presentation. So first I will provide a brief introduction. I will talk about the definition of accessibility, why accessibility is important. I will talk very briefly about screen reading technology and about the accessibility checker tool. Then we will move on to best practices when you're going to prepare your slides for your presentation. So we will talk about slide titles, reading order, images and the use of alternative text or alt text, colors, fonts, lists, tables, links, videos, transcripts, and some considerations if you're using sign language interpretation. Then we will move on to some tips for when you're actually presenting, such as good lighting, introducing yourself inclusively, and describing visual content. And finally, we will have some additional considerations, such as converting your presentation slides to a PDF file. We will also briefly talk about tactile materials. I will offer you a couple of supplemental resources to learn more. And then I will also talk to you briefly about how to become certified in accessibility. Okay, so let's go. So what is accessibility? Accessibility can be defined as the quality of being able to be reached, entered, or used. And on my screen, I have an image of an entrance. And on the left, it has 3 steps. And then on the right, it has a ramp. So this is an accessible entrance because it's providing multiple ways to access, right? And so I do want to note that in this case, for example, the ramp would provide access or easier access perhaps to a person using a wheelchair, or a parent pushing a stroller, or somebody pushing some sort of cart, a shopping cart or something. So it is important to note that this kind of access will help not just people with disabilities, right? Like in the example, maybe a parent pushing a stroller, maybe the parent doesn't have any disabilities, but having the ramp will also benefit that person. So accessibility really benefits everyone. So why is accessibility important? Well, again, because we need different routes so that everybody can access. In terms of digital accessibility, we also access content in different ways. Some people may rely more on visuals, some on audio, some on touch, or some on a combination of different things. But the bottom line is that we all should be able to access all the content that is available. And again, we all benefit from having multiple ways to access the content. So on my screen, I have a screenshot of an actual email that I received that was informing me and a group of people that there was a town hall. So this was an online meeting, right? And we were being informed that the meeting was full. So we were supposed to join the meeting with video conference, but when the meeting was full, the only option was to join by phone. So on the image, it's telling us what number to call. And so this is to illustrate another example in which, again, it is important to note that accessibility really benefits everyone, or designing things with accessibility in mind will benefit everyone. So in this case, having a way to access the meeting by using audio and not just video could benefit a person with visual disabilities, but will also benefit somebody that simply could not access because the meeting was full, could not access with the video option. So it is good. Now you have another choice. You can just call and then you can get the information on your phone. Or it could benefit somebody that is having technical difficulties, again, like with the computers. So maybe that person just grabs the cell phone and now there's another way to access the meeting. Okay, next I want to talk briefly about what a screen reader is. And I wanted to have this in the introduction because many of the tips or many of the guidelines that we should use when we build our slides for our presentation are more easily understood if we know what a screen reader is. So in its simplest terms, a screen reader is a software program that helps people with visual disabilities use a computer. So we can say that it reads the text displayed on the computer screen with a speech synthesizer or a braille display. And then the screen reader user sends commands by pressing different combinations of keys on the computer keyboard or a braille display. And the speech synthesizer will speak automatically when changes occur on the computer screen. Again, a disclaimer, this is just in its simplest terms. A screen reader is much more complex than that. But for us to start thinking about how we can implement certain guidelines when we build our slides, this would help us have an idea of what the screen reader is. And so next, I want to show you a segment of a video where an actual screen reader user is demonstrating how the screen reader works. So I'm going to play that now.
Hi, my name is Jason Holt. I'm with the Universal Access Department. Today, we will be demonstrating a screen reader. With this screen reader, I, as a blind person, can navigate to a web page, and I don't use a mouse because I can't see where the mouse is pointing, but I can use a keyboard, and JAWS, the screen reader, will tell me where I am on the page and allow me to read various parts of the page. Okay, let's take a few minutes to actually see how JAWS works. Here we are at my main screen on my computer, and I want to browse the internet, so I will open up a browser. I'll press the Windows key.
Menu, search box, edit, type text in this edit field, or press up or down there.
And JAWS announced that I have a menu. Then I want to find my browser. My favorite browser is Firefox.
JAWS 17.0, one of Internet Explorer submit, Word 2013 submit, Firefox submenu 406.
Firefox, that's the one I want, so I'll press enter.
Enter, leaving menus, Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, start page, Mozilla Firefox, search clear.
That opens the browser. Now I'll press Alt-D to put my cursor in the navigation bar.
Alt-D, navigation toolbar, search.
Now let's go to our homepage, the community college's homepage. So I'll type SLCC
period, E-D-U.
EDU. You notice that JAWS repeats to me each character as I type it. That way if I make a mistake, I can hear it and I can backspace.
Okay, and so that is how the screen reader works. And if you're interested in learning more, of course, you can, there are several demonstration videos on YouTube. And that way, or you can even download a screen reader on your computer. There is one that is free. It's called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access. And so you can download it and experiment with it. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about the Accessibility Checker. So this is a pretty cool built-in tool available in several applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Acrobat Pro. So this is a pretty cool tool that will tell you what potential issues with accessibility you may have in your documents or spreadsheets. In the case of PowerPoint, it will tell you what potential problems you may have on your slides. So it will list for you errors, warnings, tips. It will also tell you why each issue is important. And the best part is that it will tell you step by step what is it that you have to do to fix those issues. Again, another disclaimer. If you use Accessibility Checker tool and you're creating your PowerPoint presentation, and finally the Accessibility Checker tool tells you there are no issues, that does not mean that your presentation is 100% accessible. There could be other issues that the tool could not identify. So that's a disclaimer. This is just a tool, but it's a very, very good start, especially if you're just learning how to build accessible materials. It is very, very helpful. I feel like it's kind of a good training wizard that is starting to tell you, okay, pay attention to images, or pay attention to having unique slide titles, or many other things. So it is very, very helpful. So again, it's not going to fix everything, but it's a very, very solid start. And I will talk more about it in a little bit. So on my screen now I have a screenshot of a PowerPoint presentation to illustrate the Accessibility Checker. So this is an example of a PowerPoint presentation of the GLOVE program. It's one of the e-training models. So this one is the mosquito protocol. And so on the top left, I am highlighting the check accessibility icon. And then on the right, I have the accessibility checker pane open, listing errors, warnings, and tips. So I am going to go to the next slide, in which I have expanded accessibility checker so that hopefully it is easier to see. So on my screen now I have the accessibility checker pane, again a little bit magnified. And so it is showing the inspection results for the example, for the presentation that I was showing as an example. So on this example, it is telling me that I have several errors. I am missing alternative text, and then there is a parenthesis with a number that says 49. That means that I am missing alternative text in 49 slides. If I were to expand that error, it would tell me specifically on what slides I am missing the alternative text, and I will tell you what alternative text is in a little bit. But first, I just wanted to show you how the accessibility checker looks like. So after those errors, it is also warning me that I have low contrast, and I will talk about color contrast also in a little bit. So in this case, in this example, it's telling me that I have low contrast on slide 10. It is also warning me that I should check the reading order on 68 slides. And then it's giving me some tips. It is telling me that I have a duplicate slide title on slide 7. So that's what the accessibility checker looks like, and we will talk about these different accessibility issues on the next slides. But the bottom line is that you should, I think, you should have the accessibility checker open as you are creating your presentation. And again, it will update you about any potential errors, warnings, and it will also tell you how you could fix different issues. So it's a good practice to have the accessibility checker open on your PowerPoint as you go. Okay, so how to prepare your presentation? So first we'll start with slide titles. So slide titles obviously are very helpful for everyone, right? They tell us what each slide is about. So they are helpful for everyone to navigate a presentation. But they are especially helpful for those who are not able to view the slide. And that is why it is very important to use unique titles. If you have 17 slides with the same title, well, that's not really going to be very helpful in terms of navigation. So if you have several slides about the same topic, you could add maybe numbers or letters or the word continuation or more words to uniquely identify each slide. For example, let's say that you have 2 slides about results and graphs, then maybe you say results and graphs 1 out of 2, results and graphs 2 out of 2, something like that. So pretty straightforward, just use unique slide titles. The next important thing when creating your presentation is the reading order. So again, I want you to remember what we saw about how the screen reader works, right? The screen reader will read the content of the slide in a linear fashion. What does that mean? Well, if you can see the slide, pretty much you see the slide as a whole, right? Your eyes let you see the whole content at once. So you kind of organize, or you can make sense of it as a whole. But think about what would happen if you could not see the slide and then you're relying on the screen reader to read you the content of the slide. Well, the screen reader is not going to read the whole content at once, right? Instead, it's going to read the items in a linear fashion, one item after the next. And that is why the order in which the elements are organized on your slides is very important. So we'll see on the next slide something called the selection pane, which shows you the order in which the items on your slide are going to be read by the screen reader. And so the objects on your slide listed in that selection pane are going to be read from bottom to top. And I will talk more about it when I show you the image of a selection pane. So to review and fix the reading order of the elements of your slide, you need to go to Home, Drawing, Arrange, Selection pane. So the Home menu, then Drawing, then Arrange, and then Selection pane. So again, it's about you thinking if somebody had to read to you, or if the screen reader is going to read to you the elements of your slide, what would make sense? What would be the order in which it would make sense for you if somebody was reading you? Well, obviously first the title, then maybe a piece of text, then maybe the description of an image, then maybe another piece of text, and then another image. What would make logical sense? And that's what you have to think about as you are organizing the items on your slide. So on my screen now I have an example of a PowerPoint presentation. It's a screenshot, in this case, of the carbon cycle introduction electronic module in Globe. And so on this example, I am highlighting the home menu. So the home menu is open, and then towards the right, there is the Arrange submenu that's next to the drawing tools. And then on the bottom, there is the selection pane. So you click on selection pane to open that pane and see what order you should have for your items on your slide. So on my screen now I have the selection pane magnified, and basically it will list again like the items of a particular slide. Once again, here the selection pane will list the order in which the screen reader would read the items of your slide, of each slide, from the bottom to the top. So on the example that I have on my screen, on the bottom I have title 23. That means that that's the first thing on that slide that will be read, which is good. You would want the screen reader to read the title first, right? You don't want the screen reader to read the text first or the body of the slide before the title. So that's good. It will read first the title. Then from the bottom to the top, the next item that it's going to read is the text placeholder 6, then picture 5. And these numbers are just, it's something that PowerPoint assigns automatically as you go inserting, different text placeholders or different pictures. So don't worry about the numbers. The bottom line is that when you select each of these items on the selection pane, they will also be highlighted on your slide. So you will know what the text placeholder 6 in this case is referring to, what the picture 5 is referring to, and so on. And all you have to do is just review and make sure that that order, if the screen reader is reading first the title, then that text placeholder, then that picture, that makes logical sense. If it doesn't, that selection pane on the top right has an up arrow and a down arrow. You can just click on those to modify the order so that, again, like the order in which the screen reader will read the items will make logical sense. So you can organize them just so that they make sense. And this is just practice. So just like try with a PowerPoint presentation, open the selection pane, and then it will make much more sense to you. Okay, the next important guideline when creating your slides has to do with images. So the screen reader can only read text. If you insert an image, the screen reader is not going to just know what the image is about, right? Because of that, whenever you insert images on your slides, you should add alternative text. So what is alternative text? It's basically a short and clear description of the image. So you're going to type a description of that image so that then it becomes accessible. So then the screen reader will read the image, blah, blah, blah. It will read the description of the image. And that is how then the person that is using a screen reader is going to know what the image is about. very important to note, decorations do not need alternative text. They should not have alternative text. You should add only alternative text to things that actually convey meaning. And generally, you can add alternative text by right-clicking if you have a PC, or control-clicking if it's a Mac, the object, and then selecting Edit All Text. And this applies to many applications. But yeah, so just right-click, Edit All Text. You should be good to go. There could be small variations from app to app or version to version, but if you just look up alternative text or alt text, it will be very easy for you to add. And then you just enter a description of the image. And on my screen, I have now an example. So this is an example of a slide, again, of a globe training module about the carbon cycle. And so it has some text about carbon, a building block of life, and then it has 6 images. I am highlighting one where we can see a girl playing with a toy truck on dirt. And on the right, to the right of the slide, I have the alt text window open. And so it is showing the text box where you can type the description of the image. So in this case, that's what I typed: girl playing with toy truck on dirt. So again, that's what the screen reader is going to read when the slide is read. It's going to read that description, and therefore the image will be accessible. Next, I would like to talk about color contrast. So some people cannot see certain colors. In fact, there's a kind of large percentage of people that cannot see all colors. Because of that, it is especially important that you are very mindful of the colors that you select when you are building your slides. You have to ensure that there is enough contrast between the foreground and the background. Otherwise, the text might blend in with the background, and so people cannot read what's on the slide. So to make it easy for you, you could simply use dark text on a white or off-white background, or the other way around and use white text on a dark background. But if you would like to use like a more colorful slide, that's fine too. But then you could use a color contrast analyzer. So on these slides, I have added a link for one of them. There are different kinds, or like different companies have different analyzers. But just download one, and then that will let you pick color combinations that offer enough contrast to make sure that colorblind people can also read the slides. Also, people with not the best vision will benefit from that. And I think everyone, once again, it's just going to be much easier to read the slides if there is enough color contrast. So on my screen now I have an example. This is a screenshot from the aerosols training model in Globe. And it's an example of a table that has a header with the font in white and the background in light green. And the accessibility checker on the right is actually warning me about that. It's telling me that I have low contrast on that slide. So very easy to fix. Just change the colors, make the background maybe darker, or again, like just use white text on top of a very dark background, or the other way around, and then you're good to go. Another important thing about color: we should not use or rely exclusively on color to convey meaning. So on my screen, I have the image of 2 bar graphs that are very similar, that are next to each other, but the one on the left has the bars of different colors, and then it has the legend, right, identifying what color is representing what item, and that's it. So think about it. Again, like if you're colorblind, then this graph will be very difficult for you to interpret, because you don't know exactly what item refers to what color. You cannot or you should not assume that the items are listed maybe like what is listed from top to bottom corresponds to left to right on the graph. You don't know, right? Different writing systems, different cultures may order things differently. So the alternative or a better way to do this graph is illustrated on the right part of the screen. In this case, there's a very similar bar graph, but then each bar, in addition to having a different color, it also has a different texture or pattern. So the first bar has like squares, then the second one, or like checkers, the second one has some diagonal bars, the third one has like a grid, and then the fourth one is a solid color. And in addition to having different textures, the labels for what item is represented by each bar are also placed on top of each bar. So there's no confusion, there is no way to get it wrong in this case. You know exactly what item is represented by what bar. Once again, like this is not supporting only people who are colorblind or with low vision. This is really helping everyone. With the labels on top of the bars and the different texture, is just so much easier to immediately know what item is being represented by what bar. The next item has to do with fonts. So as you know, there are many different kinds of fonts. Some are more like, you know, they have more flair or like more fancy traces, things like that. The idea for accessibility is to use those fonts that are just the simplest, like straight lines, no flair, nothing crazy about it, because it's just easier for everyone to read. So those fonts are called sans serif, and some examples are Arial, Corvell, and Tahoma. So there are many more, but basically it's just fonts that are very, very straightforward, just simple lines, no flair, nothing crazy about them. And this will make everything easier to read. They can help support especially, again, people who are colorblind, people with low vision, people with dyslexia, but they really help everyone. It's just going to be easier to read for everyone. The next item has to do with lists. So sometimes we have to include information about, for example, a procedure, right, or a process. So for example, in GLOVE, in the aerosols protocol, right, there's a procedure for us to measure the aerosol optical thickness. Say. So we have to first turn on our photometer, then we have to wait until the GPS signal is found, then we have to point the photometer at the sun, and so on. So that's a list, right? An ordered list, because the order is important. It's a process. So we typically use numbers, right, to order the steps. So that's an ordered list. And sometimes we're just going to add a list of items in which the order is not important. So for example, on the right here, I have an unordered list in which I am listing the different kinds of contrails. So I am saying they can be short-lived or persistent non-spreading or persistent spreading. But again, the order doesn't really matter. It's not a sequence or anything. So that would be an unordered list. What is essential in terms of accessibility is that both for ordered or unordered lists, that you use the pre-formatted menus or built-in options. So for ordered lists, you want to use the pre-formatted or the built-in numbering option that PowerPoint gives you. And that will be the same for other applications and Word and other applications. So use the built-in numbering. Same with the unordered list. Then you want to use bullets. Use the built-in bullets that are available in the application. Why? Because if you use the built-in options, then the screen reader will also be able to announce that there is a list. It will be able to announce that there's a list coming up of how many items to the user. So the user can like expect like, okay, I'm expecting a list of 6 items, say. If you just enter your own numbers or your own hyphens or stars or little things to indicate the bullets, visually that will make sense. But with a screen reader, that will not make as much sense. The screen reader will not know that there is a list coming up and how many items are on the list, like right off the bat. So just use the built-in numbering and bullets options. The next item has to do with tables. So on my screen, I have an example of a table in which I was measuring aerosol optical thickness at 3 different wavelengths. So I have 4 columns. So I have my first column with the dates and times. Then the next column is having the values for the AOT at a certain wavelength, and then 2 more with different wavelengths. The important thing here with tables is that, again, like picture yourself if you could not see the table and just make sense of the whole table just by looking at it. If somebody had to read the values of the table, then it would be very, very important that that you knew what belongs to that value, that value belongs to a certain category. Because of that, it is important that you identify which row contains the column headers. For that, you would go to select header row, table properties, row tab, and then select the option that says repeat as header row at the top of each page. You don't have to memorize that. Just the accessibility checker would remind you what you have to do to identify those column headers, but the bottom line is that this would allow the screen reader to tell the user, okay, for the UTC of January 1st, 2018 at 12:53, the AOT at 675 value is that, AOT 500 is that, and AOT 440 is that. So it will be able to read the header first before saying the value in each cell. That way the person will know, okay, so that belongs to that specific category, right? Otherwise, imagine just the screen reader just reading all the values in a row without knowing which one belongs to what. That would be chaos. So that's why it's very important to identify the column headers on a table. And also it's important to add alternative text to tables. So you can also add a clear short description of the table as a whole that will also provide a quick idea of, okay, what is the table about? The next item has to do with links. So you may have seen many times some presentations and other documents that there are hyperlinks that have the text like this link or click here or click or website or here. That's great until you're using a screen reader and you're trying to navigate those hyperlinks on a presentation quickly and efficiently. And you use the tab key to jump from one hyperlink to the next. And all you hear is here, here, click here, link, click here. YouTube.com/watch VNOFJ. Like that makes no sense. So for accessibility, what you should do is use the text to display field when you insert your link. And I think that some applications are doing that now automatically. But if not, you can use it yourself, and you can use the text to display field so that you enter an actual, well, a text that actually makes sense. What is that hyperlink taking you? So for example, I could use the hyperlinks to go to the Goddard Institute for Space Studies website, and then on that text to display on the hyperlink, I will enter exactly that, Goddard Institute for Space Studies. That way, when a person is using a screen reader and is jumping from one hyperlink to the next, that person will know, okay, that hyperlink is taking me to the Goddard Institute for Space Studies website. As opposed to, again, like just adding click here, 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 and that gives no information. So just enter a text that makes sense. Videos. So to increase accessibility in videos, we can use audio description, captioning, and transcripts. So first I want to show you like an exercise. It's just an example of to try to simulate what would happen if there is a video in a presentation and you can hear but you cannot see the video. So I'm gonna play it for you.
Usually all of this is balanced, but right now with the increase of greenhouse gases.
Okay, and so that was a black screen and there was some sound, right? So you got some information about the video, but maybe you're wondering, but what did I miss? I could not see anything, I could only hear. So let's go to the next slide. So in that case, again, like you got some audio, right? But you could not see the video, what was happening there. So to make a video more accessible, what you can do is use audio description. So what that means is that you can insert your own voice, your own recording, describing what is happening on that video so that a person that cannot see what is happening on the video can get the idea of what is occurring because you are adding a description with your voice. So for that, there is a website, it's called YouDescribe, that lets you, as it says, describe what is happening on the video. You add your own recordings. And so on my screen, I have an image, it's just a screenshot that I took of the YouDescribe website when we were describing a video about aerosols. And so basically it has on the top left a little screen where you can see the YouTube video playing. Then on the right, it has a notepad, so you can type basically your script so that you don't forget what is it that you wanted to say to record it. And then on the bottom, it has like some controls so that you start adding your recording, deleting, pausing, saving, and publishing. So the website is youdescribe.org, and it will let you add description to any YouTube video for free. It's pretty fun, actually. Then I'm going to play the same video that I played before, but in this case, the presenter did add audio description. So again, you can hear what you cannot see, but the presenter took the time to add audio description. So here it goes again.
Two diagrams of clouds trapping heat and clouds rejecting heat on opposite sides of a balanced scale.
Usually all of this is balanced, but right now with the increase of greenhouse gases.
The diagram of clouds trapping in heat is lower on the scale, while the diagram of rejecting heat is higher up. A thermometer shows a high temperature.
So hopefully you like that, right? Because then in this case, the presenter did take the time to describe what was happening on the screen. So hopefully you got much more information that way. So next I want to show you the same example, but now it's a different situation. In this case, you can see, but you cannot hear. So I'm going to play the video again. And granted, you already know because you already heard it before, so we are cheating, but still, I just want to play it for you to see the other way. In this case, you can see the video, but now you cannot hear it. So I'm gonna play it now. Okay, and on my screen, I have basically what was described before. It's a balance scale with diagrams of clouds. One is rejecting heat, and the other one is absorbing it. And there's a thermometer in between. I am going to now go to my next slide. And so, yes, so what you can do in that case, right, to make your video more inclusive and more accessible is to use captioning. So very much like the YouDescribe website, there is this website called amara.org, that will let you add captioning for free. And so on my screen, I have a screenshot of an example. On the top left, there are the keyboard controls. to start playing the video, pausing it and inserting lines. On the top right, there is a little screen with the YouTube video in this case. And in this case, because the video was already captioned, I was adding subtitles in Spanish. So that's another use for this. You could also make the things more accessible if you know another language, if you can add subtitles. And on the bottom, there are just like other controls. There's a text box where you actually enter your captions. This is only an option. There are many ways or many tools for you to caption videos. This is just one. It's free, but there are other choices as well. And of course, like maybe the video, like if you know that maybe the video is already captioned, like just look for a version that is already captioned. And if not, then you can caption it yourself. So I am going now to play the same video. So in this case, you can see, you cannot hear, but the presenter did take the time to add captions. So I'm going to play it again. Great. And so that was the same video with the diagrams of clouds, a thermometer, but in this case, there were captions. Okay. And so now I want to play for you the same video that is more accessible because it has both the audio description and the captions. So hopefully you will like this. I'm going to play it now.
Two diagrams of clouds trapping heat and clouds rejecting heat on opposite sides of a balanced scale.
Usually all of this is balanced, but right now, with the increase of greenhouse gases,
The diagram of clouds trapping in heat is lower on the scale, while the diagram of rejecting heat is higher up. A thermometer shows a high temperature.
Great. So a much more inclusive video. So that is very, very helpful. And then on this slide now I have a black screen. There is no video, no sound. So I'm just trying to exemplify what happens if you cannot see and you cannot hear either. So in that case, what you can do is use transcripts, or you can also use tactile materials. So transcripts allow a deafblind person access a video, but they also benefit, again, they really help everyone. Everyone would benefit from being able to follow, right, in a different way with a transcript. They also benefit sighted people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people who are learning the language used in the presentation, and visual learners. And again, just everyone. A transcript is very helpful. So that's another thing that you should do as you are preparing your slides. Where you're done preparing the slides, you can also prepare a transcript that you can also make available. Now, some considerations if you're going to use sign language interpretation in your presentation, then something else to think about is to arrange a planning meeting with interpreters. They're the experts, and so they should be part of your core team as you're preparing for your presentation. Having a meeting with interpreters can help you determine the technology, in case of these online meetings, determine the technology configuration to ensure that the interpreters and the slides and the captions are shown on the screen at all times for all users. Also, having a meeting with interpreters will allow for the interpreters to become familiar with the content of your presentation, especially if the content is, maybe like very technical, very scientific, things like that. It definitely makes sense to have interpreters become familiar with the content. Sometimes there is no consensus about certain signs for certain terms. So definitely allow for the interpreters to become familiar with the content. Also provide them with your agenda, with the number of speakers, what the preferred communication mode of each speaker is, what transitions are going to happen between speaker and speaker, so that they are ready and they can better prepare for the interpretation. And please do provide them with the slides so that they have them in advance and they know what the sequence is and all that. Okay, so then when you're actually presenting, some tips when you're going to present. Have good lighting. If you have a window on your back, to close the shades, and if you don't have enough natural light, consider supplemental lighting. Again, this benefits everyone. Everyone wants to see as best as possible, but this is also particularly special if in your audience you have people that are relying mostly on visual information. You want to make sure that they can see you well or as best as possible. People may want to see your facial expressions and your gestures and all that. So the next thing is, when you're going to present, do introduce yourself inclusively. So you should describe your appearance. For example, you can say you have long hair, short hair, blonde hair, brown eyes, blue eyes, what clothing you're wearing, the colors, maybe even your background. Again, that is to be inclusive, right? People, not everyone may be able to see you, and they also want to have an idea of what you look like. Colors do have meanings, tend to have associated meanings, right? So describe your appearance, and also state your pronouns. For example, she, her, hers, or he, him, his, they, them. Stating your pronouns is a very inclusive practice. Sometimes we make assumptions or wrong assumptions about the gender of a person just by their name or their appearance. If that's wrong, that can be harmful. And so stating your pronouns is a very respectful practice. It also tells the other person that I am safe. You can tell me your pronouns and I will be using those pronouns. So that's a very good practice. The other thing is to describe visual content. Again, remember that maybe some people in the audience, whether it's in person or online, will be able to see the slides. Some people will be able to see them, some will not. Some people may have a disability, some people may have a technical difficulty, some people may be using only dial-in option. So describe the visual content. That way everyone knows what is happening on the screen. You are the eyes of some people. And describe meaningful, relevant content. So again, it is not necessary for you to describe decorations or anything like that. Just what is actually conveying meaning. And if you're responding to questions or comments from the chat, read the questions or comments before answering. So again, always be mindful, not everyone can see what is happening on the chat. And even also like for in-person meetings, always restate the question because sometimes people cannot hear it. Maybe the person is very close to you and you could hear fine, but somebody at the back cannot hear. So restate the question or the comment so that everyone can have access. Some additional considerations. So if you're going to be converting your slides to PDF before you share them, avoid using print as PDF because that will remove many of the accessibility items. So maybe you follow all the rules and now your presentation is really accessible, but then if you use print as PDF, it will all go to waste. It will remove the accessibility considerations. So instead, use as save as and check the best for electronic distribution and accessibility option or the document structure tags for accessibility. Tactile materials, this is another consideration. So again, some people may not be able to see or hear the presentation. It is a good idea to also develop tactile materials to provide more access and another route to access the amazing content that you want to share. So an idea would be to look for a public library with Braille resources. That's something that I tried and that has been really wonderful. The Andrew High School and Talking Book Library in New York City has been an amazing place for me and for my son to learn about accessibility. They will, again, if they have Braille resources, most likely they have tools that you can use. An example is Tactile View. That is an easy-to-use software that lets you convert text to Braille and also create tactile graphics. They may also have a Braille embosser that basically prints in Braille and raised dots graphics. They may have 3D printers available to you, so you can also create models. So see what's available for you. Just look for, Braille libraries or libraries with Braille resources. So on my screen, I have an example of a raised dot diagram of a rubber that I was able to create in this Braille library. And again, it's super easy to use. Just if you can try that and go, and most likely they will be able to help you learn about these resources. And now I just want to do the post-assessment. We did the pre-assessment in the beginning, so we're going to now do the post-assessment. So question number 1. I can introduce myself more inclusively by A, describing my appearance, B, making sure I have good lighting, C, stating my pronouns, or D, all of the above. Question number 2. Alternative text. A is read by screen readers in place of images, allowing the content to be accessed by people with visual disabilities. B is not needed for decorative images. C provides a textual alternative to non-text information such as images, or D, all of the above. Question number 3. Lists A are more accessible when we manually insert numbers or hyphens. B should be avoided on every document or presentation. C are more accessible when we use built-in numbering and bullets. Or D, none of the above. Question number 4. Tables A should identify what row contains the column headers. B should have a maximum of 10 rows. C cannot be read by screen readers. Or D, all of the above. And question number 5. Videos become more accessible if they have A, captioning, B, audio description, C, transcripts, or D, all of the above. If you were not sure about some of the answers, I invite you, you can either rewind or you can look it up, on the internet, but I do hope that you were able to answer the questions easily. And to learn more, I would like to suggest for you to definitely, try to make a commitment to learn more about accessibility. There are many resources. I would like to highlight Coursera at the University of Illinois. Has a pretty good introduction to accessibility and inclusive design course. And Coursera is free, so you can take this for free. And there's also the WebAIM or Web Accessibility in Mind website that offers online guides, accessibility tools, technical assistance, and trainings. So those are just 2 resources. Another tip, I do encourage you to get certified in accessibility. You can visit the International Association of Accessibility Professionals website. You can review the different certifications that are available. There is one in Accessibility Core Competencies. There's one for more technical specialists, web accessibility specialists, and there's also certification in accessible built environments. You can register for a course, then apply to take the test. You take it, and then you share your certification credentials. And with that, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I do hope that this was helpful. And on my screen, I now have an image of a traffic sign symbol saying sign language spoken here. Thank you. Bye.